For 15 years, nobody questioned why the night shift stock clerk knew every camera angle in the store, why he could predict trouble before it happened, why his hands never shook, even during robberies. The armed gang was about to find out why. Welcome to True Human Tales. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden courage and deadly precision, tell me in the comments from which city are you watching this video today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor the silent warriors among us. SuperValue Grocery sat on the corner of Industrial Boulevard like a beacon in the urban night. The 24-hour store served a neighborhood that never quite slept. Shift workers grabbing coffee at 3 a.m., hospital staff picking up dinner after long shifts, and the occasional late-night customer who'd run out of essentials. The fluorescent lights never dimmed, the doors never locked, and life continued at its own rhythm through the small hours. Danny Rodriguez had worked the night shift there for 15 years, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week. He stocked shelves, rotated inventory, and maintained the store's overnight operations with quiet efficiency. At 41, he was the kind of employee managers loved, reliable, punctual, and capable of handling the store alone during the deadest hours. The neighborhood regulars had grown accustomed to seeing him there, a constant fixture among the aisles, always working with methodical precision. Most of the regular customers knew Danny by sight, if not by name. He'd been there longer than almost anyone, a constant presence who kept the shelves full and the aisles clean. The night cashiers appreciated his work ethic, and the few people who made conversation found him polite but reserved. "Evening, Danny," they'd say as they passed him in the cereal aisle at midnight. "Evening," he'd reply with a slight nod, then return to his clipboard and inventory sheets. But there were things about Danny Rodriguez that didn't quite add up if you knew what to look for. He never positioned himself where he couldn't see both the front entrance and the emergency exits. His stock cart was always arranged so he could move quickly in any direction, and he had an unusual habit of pausing whenever the door chimes announced a new customer, studying their body language before returning to his tasks. The store's security cameras covered every angle, but Danny seemed to know their blind spots by heart. The overnight cashiers had noticed his patterns over the years. Danny never took breaks in the back office, preferring to stay near the customer service counter where he could observe the entire store. He could navigate the storage areas in complete darkness and had an uncanny ability to sense trouble before it materialized. During the few robberies the store had experienced, Danny had always been the first to spot the threats. "Guy's got radar or something," joked Maria, the lead night cashier who'd worked with Danny for 8 years. "Always knows when someone's up to no good." What Maria didn't know, what nobody knew, was that Danny Rodriguez had spent 10 years as a Navy SEAL, including 3 deployments to Iraq and 2 to Afghanistan. He'd been part of SEAL Team 3, specializing in urban warfare and close-quarters combat in environments where distinguishing between civilians and combatants could mean life or death. His final mission still haunted him sometimes, a hostage rescue that had gone sideways, requiring him to extract 5 civilians from a compromised safe house under heavy fire. He'd gotten them all out alive, but the experience had left scars that went deeper than the shrapnel wounds on his shoulder. Danny had left the Navy in 2008 with an honorable discharge and skills that translated poorly to civilian employment. The hypervigilance that had kept him alive in Fallujah made him jumpy around crowds. The tactical thinking that had made him an effective SEAL made him overanalyze every social situation. The night shift grocery job had been perfect. Minimal human interaction, predictable routines, and a work environment that kept his instincts sharp without triggering the anxiety that still visited him occasionally. For 15 years, Danny had found the peace he'd been looking for. The store was his area of operations, and he protected it with quiet professionalism. Nothing happened without his knowledge. No suspicious activity went unnoticed. But on a Thursday night in February, Danny's 2 worlds collided in the most violent way possible. It was 2:17 a.m. when they entered. Danny was in aisle 7, rotating the breakfast cereal inventory when he noticed them through the security mirror. 5 men, early 20s to mid-30s, entering with coordinated movement. They wore hoodies and baseball caps pulled low, but Danny could see enough to catalog their features. More importantly, he could see the way they moved tense, alert, hands positioned near concealed weapons, professional. Coordinated, armed, Danny's blood went cold as he watched them spread out through the store. 2 headed for the pharmacy section, 2 more toward the alcohol aisle, and 1 positioned himself near the front registers where Maria was working classic robbery formation, but something felt wrong. 5 men for a simple grocery store robbery was overkill, especially at 2 a.m. when the registers would be nearly empty. Danny slipped his phone from his pocket and checked the store's security system. The camera feeds confirmed his fears. These weren't desperate junkies looking for quick cash. They were organized, well-equipped, and moving with precision. The tall one near the registers was the leader, coordinating the others with hand signals. Ex-military, probably. But what chilled Danny was the man's expression when he turned toward the camera. He was smiling, not nervously, but with cold satisfaction. This wasn't just a robbery. This was something worse. Danny reached for the emergency button that would trigger a silent alarm to police dispatch, then stopped. The response time for this neighborhood was 8 to 12 minutes on a good night. By the time officers arrived, whatever these men had planned would be finished. The first weapon appeared at 2:19 a.m. The leader pulled a sawed-off shotgun from beneath his hoodie and leveled it at Maria, who froze with her hands still in the register drawer. The sound of the weapon being cocked echoed through the store like a thunderclap, followed immediately by the appearance of 4 more firearms as the other men revealed their hardware. "Everyone on the ground!" the leader shouted, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Hands where I can see them!" "This is a robbery," Danny watched from behind his shelf display as the 3 other customers, an elderly man buying medicine, a young mother with a sleeping baby, and a hospital worker in scrubs, dropped to the floor in terror. Maria raised her hands, her face pale but her voice steady. But Danny noticed something that chilled him. The men weren't focusing on the registers or the safe. They were herding the customers toward the back of the store, away from the windows, away from potential witnesses. Danny reached for the emergency button, then stopped. The response time for this neighborhood was 8 to 12 minutes. By the time officers arrived, whatever these men had planned would be finished. This wasn't a robbery at all. It was an execution. Time to move. Danny slipped into the stockroom, moving through the supply shelves with silent efficiency. 15 years of working alone had taught him every inch of this building, every hiding spot, every tactical advantage. Danny opened the maintenance locker he'd discreetly modified years earlier, containing equipment he'd hoped never to need. Tactical knife, zip tie restraints, pepper spray, and improvised weapons crafted from store inventory. No firearms. He'd promised himself he was done with killing, but enough hardware to level the playing field. 5 targets, unknown additional weapons, 4 civilians, multiple escape routes. It was exactly the kind of urban warfare scenario he'd trained for his entire military career. Danny slipped back into the store proper, using the end cap displays and promotional stands as concealment while he moved into position. The gunmen had forced their hostages into the back corner near the deli counter, where they'd be invisible from the street and difficult for responding officers to reach. The first gunman never saw him coming. The man was positioned near the frozen food section, using his rifle to keep the hospital worker pinned behind a freezer case. Danny emerged from behind a display of Valentine's candy, moving with fluid silence. The tactical knife found the pressure point behind the man's ear, and he dropped unconscious before his finger could reach the trigger. 1 down, 4 to go. But the remaining gunmen were starting to notice that their communications had gone quiet. Danny heard urgent whispers over the radio earpiece he'd taken from the first target, voices demanding status reports that would never come. The leader was getting suspicious. He ordered his remaining men to tighten their perimeter around the hostages, where they could maintain visual contact with each other and better control the situation. Danny watched from behind the pharmacy counter as the gunmen forced the terrified civilians into an even tighter group near the customer service desk. The elderly man was struggling to keep up with the orders being shouted at him. The young mother was trying to keep her baby quiet, and Maria was attempting to comfort them while keeping her own fear under control. These weren't just random victims to Danny. The elderly man came in every Tuesday night for his prescriptions. The young mother worked at the hospital and stopped by for baby supplies. Maria had been there when Danny started, had trained him, had never asked questions about his past. The remaining 4 gunmen had formed a defensive semicircle around their hostages, weapons trained outward, expecting police tactical teams. What they didn't expect was a lone SEAL who knew the building better than they knew their own weapons. Danny's approach was methodical, patient, professional. He'd learned long ago that rushing into a hostage situation got innocent people killed. Instead, he used the store's layout against his enemies, turning familiar merchandise into tactical advantages. The second gunman went down when Danny dropped a 40-pound bag of dog food from the top shelf onto his head. The third fell victim to a fire extinguisher that blinded and disoriented him long enough for Danny to neutralize him with non-lethal force. That left 2 gunmen and 4 hostages in an increasingly volatile situation. The leader was screaming now, his carefully planned operation falling apart around him. He pressed his shotgun against Maria's head, using her as a human shield while demanding to know who was attacking his team. "I know you're out there," he shouted, his voice cracking with stress and rage. "Show yourself or I start killing hostages. I'll blow her head off." Danny emerged from behind the customer service counter, his hands empty and visible, moving slowly and deliberately. He looked like exactly what he appeared to be, a tired grocery clerk in a work apron, carrying nothing more threatening than an inventory clipboard. "I'm here," Danny said quietly. "Let them go. Your problem is with me." The gunman leader studied him with confusion and growing fury. This wasn't what he'd expected. Not SWAT teams or hostage negotiators, but a stock clerk who spoke with the calm authority of someone accustomed to life-and-death situations. "You did this," the gunman demanded. "You took out my guys?" "I stopped them from hurting innocent people," Danny replied. "Same thing I'm going to do to you." The leader's finger tightened on the trigger, but Danny was already moving. 15 years of civilian life hadn't dulled reflexes honed in the world's most dangerous places. He covered the distance between them in less than 2 seconds, using techniques learned in rooms that didn't appear on any official training manual to disarm and neutralize the threat without harming the hostage. The final gunman, seeing his leader fall, tried to spray the area with automatic fire. But Danny was there too, intercepting the weapon's arc with a shopping cart full of canned goods, using the heavy metal barrier to absorb the bullets while closing the distance for a final takedown. When it was over, 5 gunmen lay unconscious on the linoleum floor, and 4 hostages were safe. Danny sat against the customer service counter, checking Maria for injuries while sirens wailed in the distance. Police and federal agents arrived within minutes, their tactical teams finding a scene that defied easy explanation. A grocery store stock clerk had single-handedly stopped what appeared to be a planned mass execution, saving 4 lives with nothing but improvised weapons and skills he'd learned in military service years earlier. The questions came fast and relentless. Who was he? How had he known what to do? Where had he learned to fight like that? Danny answered them with the same quiet professionalism he'd brought to his stalking duties. Yes, he'd served in the Navy. Yes, he'd been trained for situations like this. No, he didn't consider himself a hero. He'd just done what needed to be done to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. But the investigation revealed more than Danny had wanted known. Military records that had been classified for years suddenly became relevant to a federal case. His service with SEAL Team 3, his deployments to combat zones, his specialized training in urban warfare and hostage rescue. It all came out in the reports and witness statements. The photo on the employee bulletin board, the one showing 15 years of perfect attendance awards, suddenly took on new meaning. That quiet stock clerk in the background of every company picnic photo wasn't just Danny the night worker. He was Petty Officer Rodriguez, decorated combat veteran, a warrior who'd spent 15 years walking the aisles of a grocery store like a guardian angel most people never noticed. When Danny returned to work a week later, everything had changed. Customers who'd barely acknowledged him for years now stopped to thank him. Store employees looked at him with new respect. The corporate office sent representatives to meet the man who'd saved their people. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Maria asked as they stood in the break room. Danny was quiet for a moment. "Some things are better left in the past," he said finally. "I came here to stock shelves, not to fight wars. But you saved our lives." "I protected my store," Danny replied simply. "Same thing I've been doing for 15 years, just more obvious this time." SuperValue reopened the next day with enhanced security measures and a small memorial plaque near the customer service desk where the incident had taken place. It didn't mention Danny by name, he'd specifically requested that it not, but simply read, "In appreciation of those who stand guard over others." Danny Rodriguez continued working the night shift, arriving at 10 p.m. and leaving at 6 a.m., maintaining the same quiet professionalism he'd always shown. But now people knew who he really was and what he'd been willing to do to keep them safe. The American flag that the store management displayed near the entrance didn't carry his name either. But everyone who saw it knew exactly who it honored, and why a simple grocery store had become a symbol of the hidden heroes who walk among us. Sometimes guardians wear uniforms and carry weapons. Sometimes they wear work aprons and stock shelves, watching over people who shop for groceries at 2 a.m., because life doesn't stop for convenience. Danny Rodriguez had been both kinds of guardian, and in the end, that's all he'd ever wanted to be, someone who stood between good people and the darkness that threatened them. The store was his post. The customers were his responsibility. And for 15 years, he'd never abandoned his watch. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone whose quiet presence kept you safe without you knowing it? Someone who stood guard while you lived your life in peace? Share their story in the comments below. Thank you for watching True Human Tales. If this story moved you, subscribe to support the channel. We publish stories that matter, stories that remind us that heroes don't always announce themselves, and that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones stocking shelves at 2 a.m. We'll see you in the next story. And remember, you never know who's watching over you while you shop.